Let me begin with a question. Does every verse in the Bible have the same weight and authority? Before you blurt out an answer, let me just read two verses, and then you decide whether one carries more weight than the other. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. In Psalm 137 we read, "O daughter Babylon, you devastator, happy shall be they who pay back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock." But in Matthew we read, "Then the little children were being brought into him in order that he may lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples spoke sternly to those who brought them, but Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs.' And he laid his hands on them and blessed them and went on his way." I know these are not perfectly lined up in opposition to one another, but both have to do with little children. So I return to my question. Do both of these passages carry equal weight to you, or is one more authoritative for your faith than the other? If you're like me, the answer is obvious. Jesus' words carry more weight in my understanding of our faith than do the words of Psalm 137. Psalm 137 is an artifact from a time when the children of Israel were in captivity in Babylon. Of course they hated the Babylonians. But does dashing little babies against rocks illustrate what God is all about? I really don't think so. But this illustrates an important point for us. And it is also the point of today's devotional. That is, there is an overarching storyline in the Bible that helps us interpret the many different parts of the Bible, even those parts that are problematic or even troubling. To be sure, not everything fits neatly into this storyline, but the storyline itself does help us get some handles even on those parts that don't lend themselves as being categorized easily into the narrative. So what is this storyline? It's actually easier to describe than you might think. It is all about the unfolding of the promises of God for the well-being of humankind. As the early chapters of Genesis make clear, God created the heavens and earth and placed humankind into this grand and beautiful creation simply as an act of God's abundant love. But because of human willfulness, the goodness of creation became corrupted. The stories of Adam and Eve, of Cain and Abel, and the rest of the stories in the opening chapters of Genesis read as a set of parables describing what sin in its various manifestations are like. It's about lying, hiding, and blaming others. It's about placing ourselves first, even before God. And the terrible consequence is that the world just doesn't look any more like the pristine paradise described in the first couple of chapters of Genesis. Then, beginning with Abraham, God makes a promise to bring blessing to all the families of the earth through the descendants of Abraham. The story of the rest of Genesis is the story of God keeping that promise intact, even when Abraham's family does its level best to derail it. In Exodus and beyond, God establishes the law to make the descendants of Abraham into a distinctive people whose very way of life would be a beacon to other nations to show them the way to right living before God. But of course, the people continually fail in their fundamental mission. Why, even the writers of parts of the Bible sometimes forget that Israel's purpose was more than just about Israel's continued existence. But through it all, God remains faithful, constantly nudging and shaking the people, sometimes with gentle word, sometimes through the wrath of invading armies, but always working to make the promise of blessing to all peoples come real. And so it is in the fullness of time that in Jesus Christ, God extends the promise of Abraham to include not only the Jews, but Gentiles alike. The Christian community does not supplant the Jews. In Paul's beautiful imagery, the church is engrafted into the plant that is Judaism, and the church's mission, like that of the Jews, is to live a relatively distinctive life as a witness to God's overarching love for all humankind. Now, the world won't become the primordial paradise it once was just because of our efforts. We, on our own, do not have the power to right the wrongs of countless generations. But we do have the power to make the world a little bit better in this little corner, the little corner of God's kingdom we inhabit. We do that every time we lift up the poor, the downtrodden, and the despised of the earth. Because while our mission isn't to bring in the kingdom, it is our mission to exhibit the kingdom. So that, in a nutshell, is what the biblical narrative is all about. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at how this perspective helps us interpret some of the more difficult or even contradictory passages of the Bible. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.